Tuesday, April 29th, 2025. My goodness, the election happened yesterday. Boy, did it ever happen yesterday. Our stream last night missed them calling the elections for the Liberals by about a half an hour. We wrapped her up around 9:45, and they called the election for the Liberals at 10:15, 10, I guess. So we were very close to making it all the way, carrying the whole coverage from 7:30 till the end, but we didn't quite get there. Jagmeet Singh lost his seat. Pierre Poilievre lost his seat. I've got a bunch of tabs about that. We'll talk about that quite in depth. Elizabeth May kept her seat. Freeland kept her seat. McGuinty kept his seat, which seems strange, as Freeland was a disaster as the finance minister. She delivered a budget 50% over what she promised. 50%! It's huge, unbelievable. And McGuinty was on the list of 9 traitors. I don't know how many of the other 9 traitors are in. Marco Mendocino is still the chief of staff for Mr. Carney, so that's crazy. Carney won his seat, 74% of the vote. Why would they steal this election? To get their carbon swap thing going. So the United Kingdom has CBAM, the same carbon tariff, basically, that if you import anything, they're going to slap a tariff on it, thereby destroying your ability to import cheap things and resell them in Canada. And so you will have to pay a carbon tax. The government wants its pound of flesh, and they're going to tell you it's for the climate, comrade. And that's, I think, why they did what they're doing. The EU grid goes down in Spain, and that's having some really, really negative consequences, impacts, et cetera, et cetera. And man, I have to tell you, I've been saying it for the whole time that this election's been running. I think the elections are rigged. And I think the elections are rigged. And I'm going to make a case this morning that there's some weird things that are going on with the election, but here's my prediction, and I hope I'm wrong, but oh man, sometimes I have a pretty good track record of being right. My prediction is that they'll say, yes, there was interference, but don't worry. We've investigated the interference, and we've realized that it wouldn't have changed the outcome anyway. No problems. Everything's fine. Yes, there was interference. You're right. There was interference, and those bad Chinese people will pay. Except that, now we're going to be trading with them. So be nice about it, right? And it didn't change anything. So don't worry about it. And I think that's nonsense. But I think that's what we're going to be told. And I hope I'm wrong. But anyway, lots to get to. Let's get to it first. The election last night. Mike says, we've just witnessed the end of Canada. Carney will finish the job that Trudeau started. And with 119 seats for the Liberals, 86 seats for the Conservatives, at 10:11 p.m., the CTV News called Liberals, they won the election. They've won it. That's it. Game over. They've won it. The polls closed at 10 o'clock. And I thought it would take a while to count. Like, we watched in real time as they were counting and assigning seats and stuff. And it took almost an hour and a half to decide on not even all 35 seats with regards to the Atlantic Canada after the polls had closed there. And 11 minutes later, they call it for the Liberals? 11 minutes? Really? Seriously? Right as BC closes? Had anything been counted at all? White Rabbit Warrior says, how the F are they calling the election with barely any of the polls counted? Like, the vast majority of the seats in Ontario have about 3 of 200 polls counted in each seat. What the hell? Yeah, And here's this guy. He worked for Elections Canada last night. So he's an Election Canada worker. And I don't remember what the tweet said. Chris says, something seems fishy with the election result. I was working for Elections Canada tonight in Durham region, and we hadn't counted a single vote. Then I got on my phone and see CTV's declared Liberals winning. How's that possible? Here's Chris.
So something is really fishy with what's going on with this election here in Canada. I was supposed to be working for Elections Canada tonight in Durham region, which is just east of Toronto. And so what my job was is when the votes are done at each polling station, they get brought to the office. I was there to make sure all the packages were sealed, all the documentation was in order, so then the votes can be tabulated and counted. Not a single vote in Durham region had been counted yet. None of them had been brought to the office yet. Then I go on my phone and I see CTV declaring the Liberals the winners. It's like, how is this even possible? Here we have, one of the biggest areas just east of the GTA, Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, Oshawa, Uxbridge. Not a single vote counted. And then, CTV says the Liberals win. And then CBC follows in that. This reeks. How is this even possible? Something's fishy. Something's not right. There's got to be some sort of investigation into this because it's not right.
An investigation, unfortunately. an investigation will be a red herring that 4 years later will just not yield any results. And we looked into it. Or if they did yield results, we looked into it and the election interference was minimal. It was very minimal and didn't really impact anything. So, 10,000 votes here, a bust-in group there, what interference, they say. Tracy says, all while Election Canada's website was offline. So here's all this. Alex Zoltan says, calling a razor-close election before any of the Western provinces had their votes counted is a fabulous way to throw kindling on the fire of a secession crisis. Good job, CTV and CBC. And Mark says, 95% of the GTA votes hadn't been counted yet. Atlantic Canada still had half the ridings uncalled. Not one riding in Quebec was closed. Alberta was still tabulating. BC was still voting. This is madness. Where's the outrage? We don't even need to see proof. We just need the media to tell us who the winner is. Oh, thanks, media. And then that's that. All while the Elections Canada website was offline, totally offline. And the CBC election counter thing was offline too. I couldn't load it on my phone after I killed the stream. I went in and I had to get some chocolate cereal, and my wife said, how's it looking? And I said, exactly how you'd expect. And she said, ugh. And I was like, yeah, that's about it. So, it didn't look good then, but Jeepers Creepers, it seems like it's rigged. It seems rigged. Holly Doan is responding to Elections Canada, who is saying, hello, we apologize for the inconvenience. Our website is experiencing technical difficulties. We informed the appropriate team. Please check back later. Check back later. Yeah. Oh, election night. Once every 4 years, you have one job. Like you have one job. So Holly Doan's not happy. You had 4 years, she says. So everybody's failing, and look, Mark Carney won. A majority? Oh, not quite, but basically, here's Mr. Sunshine Baby. All of the alt media guys who were very, very pro CPC, the guys who were there ready to report on a conservative win, ready to take over the CBC's job after the CBC gets canceled, basically. All of them were ready and then let down, right? Mr. Sunshine Baby says CTV is calling the election as of now a Liberal win. What? He says, what the actual F? This doesn't make any sense. Daisy says, dude, everyone here is in disbelief. I said, I tried to tell you guys. You guys didn't see this coming? Yikes. It's like when Trump lost in 2020. I think everybody was really confused. People who were following everything, it looked like Trump had more work to do. It looked like the Hunter Biden laptop was going to be a really big deal, as that's a huge October surprise, right? And then Trump loses, not just loses, but loses bigly. And then the injection at 2 a.m. of all those ballots for Biden in Maricopa County, et cetera. And then that litigated for years, right? I think it's still litigating. So it's one of those things where if you think, let me disavow you now of any thoughts that this is going to be fixed by a legal court proceeding. If Pierre comes out and says this is rigged, it's a trap. Right now, it's a trap. If Pierre walks in and says this is rigged, he's going to be lambasted by everybody. Doesn't have faith in our paper ballots, doesn't have faith in our election, doesn't have faith in Canada, so on. It's like they always knew he was anti-Canadian, may as well be 51st state. All of it, it's a trap. It's a trap and a half. So I hope he had a plan, because I saw this coming, but we'll see. And remember when I said his rallies are big? Looks like he's going to lose in the polls, and not that I believe the polls, but the polls have reflected the outcome a lot, right? And so rigged polls, rigged election, and an electorate that looks to the paid-off rigged media for the outcome of the election. Shocking. David says the Liberal Party of Canada is getting another term as the government is the biggest political con job of my lifetime. Yep. Absolutely true. Absolutely true indeed. Jean says, networks calling a Liberal government. I think they're headed for a minority, though. Seems to be true, but everything's not counted yet, so seats could flip. Although, in practice, we are in exactly the same place we were before the election. Exactly. Confidence and supply agreement, minority Liberal propped up by the NDP. Or some NDP will cross the floor and give him a natural majority, but we'll see. But Carney's at 168. The Conservatives plus the Bloc have 24. Conservatives plus the Bloc are 167. And Liberals plus the NDP, 174. Majority, 172. We are in exactly the same place we were before the election. with Mark Carney legitimized. It's like money laundering. This was an election that laundered Carney into a legitimate prime minister position and he wouldn't have run unless he knew he was going to win. Honestly, he wasn't walking in to be Kim Campbelled. So it's pretty incredible that it can be this obvious. It's obvious to me, like it's very obvious to me, but other people think that Canadians are stupid. I think that's victim blaming a little bit, and I think that we're being managed, sold a story, and the story is close but no cigar. And I think it's bullshit. But a lot of people are pointing, and I was pointing to this last night, the collapse of the NDP, the collapse of the Greens. NDP went from 24 seats down to 5 seats or something like that. And Jagmeet Singh's done. He's gone. 7 seats for the NDP. And so that big collapse is a lot of the reason why some seats that were going conservative and so on for the last long period of time, the NDP collapsed and all of that support went to the Liberals, so say. Although when we were looking at the ridings more closely, that wasn't entirely true. But anyway, the minutia of it is more complicated. Ryan says, 9 years of complete mismanagement, a housing crisis. Your children can't ever afford to buy a house. 2 million people per month using food banks, record crime, one of the worst GDP growth per capita in the world, and Canadians voted for more of it. They elected a United Nations pawn who is going to transform our nation into something completely unrecognizable. I'm at a loss. I guess Canadians just aren't hurting enough. We'll get ready, he says. This idea that things aren't bad enough that we're voting for our own demise, essentially, I think is incorrect, which is why I come to the conclusion that it's rigged. And I also look at the 2020 election in the United States, and I look at the BC election, and I look at the Ontario election, and the many ways they can rig elections. And I think, yeah, a lot of those things are in play with the federal election currently happening, or currently just run. Here's me, and I'm pointing out that another reason why I think it's rigged is this number 167, the Bloc got 23 seats. Sorry, I said 24. And the Liberals or Conservatives got 144 seats to the Liberals 168 seats. It seems very like, what's a configuration that seems real close, that doesn't give the other side the power to override our side, right? And so, well, I guess if the Conservatives and the Bloc and the NDP got together, they'd have just enough, I think 169. Does that math work? 167 plus 7. Okay, no, it's more than that. So it'd be 173, right? So they'd be able to stop the Liberals if they all wanted to, but the NDP have not shown willingness to do that. Although losing an entire party and official party status may change the NDP's behavior. Maybe their new leader will change things. But again, this majority with the Liberals and the NDP looks contrived and something they can sell to Canadians, because it would be hard to sell. Yeah, you totally voted for the party that, brought in a housing crisis, in unaffordable homes, 2 million more per month using food banks, and so on and so forth. Like that's hard to believe. So it's more believable that we'll give them a minority, which is a functional majority with the NDP support, and possibly Bloc Québécois support. And people were saying the Bloc will walk in there, because the Bloc holds balance of power too. The Bloc will walk in and say, we'll support you if you give X, Y, and Z to Quebec, and Carney will, and because that's what the Liberals do. And there you go. Maybe he'll learn some French too. Who knows, right? It's pretty wild. So there's all sorts of ways to chop this up to be in almost exactly the same position we were just in. Only now Poilievre can't hold the House of Commons hostage and filibuster because he's not there anymore. And maybe this was a way to legitimize Carney, like money launder Carney in there, and to get rid of Poilievre, right? And we're going to break down how Poilievre lost his seat in a few minutes. Michelle says, the climate cult needed a Carney win in order to implement Article 6 international carbon trading, the rules for which were just ratified at COP29 days after Trump was elected. Just a reminder that the ENGO climate cult in Canada is huge and rich, see below 2019 figures, has enormous numbers of foot soldiers, and was publicly quiet during the campaign, probably to avoid greenlash. Meeting with them was Carney's first priority before even being sworn in as Prime Minister after winning the Liberal leadership race. March 14th, 2025, National Observer. Another clear indication Carney was concerned about potential backlash from the climate movement is that the morning of his swearing in as Prime Minister, he met with leaders from environmental NGOs to outline his vision for climate. As Peter Ducker predicted in the 1970s, we're suffering from the unseen revolution, pension fund socialism. Most of the major unions are investing in green projects. And then there's some more color on that. But that's Canada. Carney's made his promises to the green cult, and he's going to deliver. And this is England, what's going on in England. And they're meeting up so they can like be two sides of a zipper, right? Like they're meeting up so they can align together and work hand in glove, work together to achieve this quote unquote climate goal, whatever it is, net zero. And Bernie says, and she's a British influencer person, she says, Jim is correct. Manufacturing, she's responding to net zero taxes are killing manufacturing, says Jim Ratcliffe, billionaire, claims green levies are driving investment and industry abroad. Yes. Bernie says, Jim is correct. Manufacturing costs are too high to be competitive, but importing won't be cheaper for long. New taxes are coming. The United Kingdom and the EU are introducing new regulations that will raise the cost of both local manufacturing and imported goods. These are being sold as green policies. CBAM, which is the same thing that Carney's talking about implementing in Canada, is a carbon tax on imports based on how much pollution is produced during manufacturing on some made-up formula. EUDR restricts imports of products linked to deforestation like wood, rubber, cocoa, and even paper unless companies can prove exactly where the raw materials came from down to the acre. That's impossible. Digital product passports will soon be required for most products, tracking environmental impacts, repairs, and origin, adding more cost and red tape. This means imports will cost more too, canceling out the advantage. Prices will rise across most goods, including basics. Inflation will rise, small businesses will struggle, and living standards will fall again. And the taxes won't save the planet anyway, but will make consultants very rich. So yeah, this is a plan. It is a plan to continue doing what they have been doing. And like, are you surprised? I can't say I'm surprised, right? This has always been the plan. This is what they were going to do, and they've told us. So Ryan says Jamil is throwing out truth bombs on Doug Ford, deservedly so. So the federal conservatives are blaming the provincial Doug Ford PCs for tanking their chances in Ontario.
And now he's trying to exercise his influence over other levels of government. And it's not like this guy is doing anything particularly well. I mean,
you did used to work for him.
I did. I'm speaking from experience. I tried to fix problems in this province, and he kept getting in his way and all his goons around him all the time. They wouldn't make anything better. And now we're seeing him because this guy's a political genius because he beat Bonnie Crombie and Stephen Del Duca. And now we got to sit around getting advice from him? No. He has taken the provincial Conservative Party and turned it into something hollow, unprincipled, something that doesn't solve problems. He's glad-handing with Chrystia Freeland, having coffees and lattes with Mark Carney. And I'm sitting here saying we need to be fighting for change and something new and something different, not being a hype man to the Liberal Party.
Some would argue that the challenge within the federal Conservative movement
province. And now
we'll leave it there. Yeah, so I don't know that it's Doug Ford's fault. Andrew says Mark Carney's bosses in Beijing are very pleased with his installation. China Daily says China is willing to develop its relationship with Canada based on mutual respect, equality, and mutual benefit. Foreign Ministry spokesman Go Jinkan, I'm getting that wrong, said after Mark Carney's Liberal Party won Monday's parliamentary elections in Canada. So China says, good job, Mark Carney. Alan says if the Conservative Party of Canada spent less time attacking PPC, People's Party candidates and supporters and focused more on their Liberal counterparts, they might win an election one day. 2015, 2019, 2021, and 2025, Conservative Party, 4 different leaders, 4-time losers. Better look in the mirror. Again, I don't know that that's accurate. I think it's more rigged than that. Honestly, I think that there's things going on that we're not privy to that are changing the election result. And that doesn't really help solve it. It doesn't help solve it one way or the other. I wish that people on the right would unite rather than showboat and you guys lost, right? It probably would have been marginally better. Like I said, Poilievre represented a pause. Poilievre represented not getting any worse, not getting any better, but not getting any worse. And now it's, I mean, all bets are off. Like we're foot fully on the accelerator and we're driving off this cliff, baby. Like that's what's happening. It's crazy. Sue Ann Levy says, I'm standing outside the Liberal election night venue in Ottawa and we are not permitted to enter. But the Times of London and Washington TV are. Conservative media, particularly independent media, are bad people, according to Carney and his Liberal shills. Yep. Ron was saying in the Canada Poly chat, this chat's been real fun, but if Mark Carney gets in, probably its days are numbered because they will come after you for participating in such things. And I mean, by extension, my show, potentially all independent media, if you report something that the media that somebody doesn't like, you could risk everything. Like you could lose your house. You could lose $70,000 in fines if it resembles at all the first bill they wanted to put through. And so there was a time when I thought there's no way that this would pass in Canada. It goes against the spirit of like free speech and the spirit of everything that Canada stands for. And Canada doesn't stand for that anymore. Canada doesn't stand for anything anymore. Canada is corrupt, broken shadow of itself, and I don't know that there's any saving it, to be quite honest with you. And so I don't know that there is anywhere, including the United States. Look at the state of YouTube. Even though Donald Trump is in charge and the president there, I don't know that that's somewhere to look at and say, yes, there's free speech there. There isn't even free speech on X, and X is purported to be the free speech platform. It's bullshit. It's nonsense, right? And so we're in a situation that's very dire, much worse than you would think, really, honestly. And so things are about to change, and I hope things don't change too much, but my goodness, it's going to look to the United Kingdom. It's going to at least get that bad, and I hope I'm wrong about that. I really do. Let's talk about numbers. Jagmeet Singh. Stacey says the LPC gained 8.8 seats. The CPC gained 25 seats. The Bloc lost 9 seats, and the Green Party lost 1 seat. But the biggest loser of the election is by far Jagmeet Singh. He threw his entire party under the bus, losing 18 seats and party status. And Donald Trump is a loser too, she says. Why? I don't know why Donald Trump is a loser. This person says this might be the first time in history where a right-wing party won the student vote but lost the election. So the Conservatives got 165 seats with 36% of the vote. Liberals got 145 seats with 31% of the vote. Bloc got 18 seats with 2.1. NDP got 13 seats with 14.5, and the Green Party got 2. And that's 900,000 students across 5,900 schools. And I don't know where the PPC is. When I was running in 2019, I won 2 high schools in my town, so that was kind of funny. I didn't win the real election, but the high school elections I won. So yay! Oh well. I think it's weird though, right? Don't you think? Here is Mark Nixon. No rigging in the high school election. Mark Nixon says, "How is this even possible?" Okay, we're going to talk about Pierre Poilievre losing his seat and what's going on with that. Mario, no, it's not Mario, it's Mark. He says, how is this even possible? Pierre is going to lose his riding. He will still be able to serve as party leader until there's a by-election. But I can't believe that Carleton voted for Bruce Fanjoy. The guy blocked me on X. That's the type of person that he is. So I had to check and see if Bruce Fanjoy was Chinese, because I thought Fanjoy sounded vaguely Chinese. I thought there's an outside chance that's a Chinese last name. But he is not. He's not Chinese. So there you go. I thought, if it was a Chinese guy in Carleton taking over, I would think, my gosh, like, that's really in your face, right? Here is M. Raleigh, and they say, Poilievre's riding is really bizarre. He represented Carleton for 20 years, and then all of a sudden, when he's running for prime minister, he loses. It's really fishy to me. And the 91 candidates, they needed to count early. There's something afoot. There's something weird afoot. Freedom Fighter says there were 90 candidates on the ballot in Pierre Poilievre's Carleton riding. Certainly some effery is going on there. Greg says, isn't that interesting? Yet timid Poilievre campaign didn't say anything. Most useless campaign advisors on the planet. That's true. They didn't make any kind of comment when there were 91 people on the ballot. And I think that's possibly because what I was talking about earlier, if he talked about it, they would say, oh, you don't have faith in our election process. And then, I mean, you'd say, well, there's 91 people on the ballot. That's insane. That's never happened before, and cite previous elections. Here is Jerry, and he says, Poilievre's campaign was the problem. He was a horrible campaign. Conservative campaigns are weak, and they have been since Harper. Poilievre blew a massive lead. His followers thanked him. They enabled him all through the campaign. My vote for Poilievre was really a vote for Carney. And I See Crap Daily says this was a strategic voting. The NDP and Greens collapsed. Poilievre got 2,000 more votes than the last election. All the other people consolidated behind the Liberal. Canada has many stupid people, but I guess it isn't bad enough yet. And again, this whole idea that it isn't bad enough yet is weird. The argument that the Greens and the New Democrats collapsed to the point of being totally out of it, giving a bunch of votes to the Liberal, is much more plausible. And I'll show you how that breaks down. Somebody else was pointing it out because they were saying that this actually makes sense. Oh, did I miss it? Oh, here it is. Idiots of Liberalism says, please go back and look at the polls. At Poilievre's height, Poilievre was getting 45%. He got 44% of the vote in Carleton. That's very close to what he'll end up getting. The reason he was 25 points ahead is because the Liberals and the NDP were at 20 points each. And you can see here 20 points Liberal, 20 points NDP there, right? The Trudeau withdrawal changed everything. Carney was able to consolidate the left. I don't doubt Trump helped him, but Poilievre never pivoted after Trudeau bowed out. He never figured out a way to run against Carney. Maybe, like that's a plausible explanation for me. Like that maps, it could fit, right? But at the same time, oftentimes, if your guy who's been your guy in your riding for 20 years is running for the prime minister, usually that riding shows up. And usually that 20-year history matters a lot. Like you're not worried that you're going to lose that riding. Usually that history carries you over. The incumbent carries, especially when they've done a good job, and becoming leader of their party is a good job. They get rewarded for that. They don't lose their seat. So the out of area ballots, all of the other stuff that's going on is just as important as this, right? As the collapse of the NDP into the Liberals. It's just as important, but I think that there's more. It's not just that. I think there's more than that, right? So take it with a grain of salt. You can look at all that and say it's definitely just that, but I think that there's more to it. Although it plays a part, certainly it does. Mr. Mitchell says, what is the population of the Carleton riding? 2021 census has it as 131,000 people. Take away children, that's about 80,000 electors left. And over 80,000 ballots counted, almost 100% voter turnout. This makes no sense. Again, when you've got people who can vote using any means necessary, and they do, to turn elections, well, things happen. And nobody's going to investigate things like this, I don't think. I don't think it's going to happen where people are going to investigate. Ryan says the Carleton riding has special permission to start counting ballots 6 hours early. I don't care about their reasoning. This stuff still doesn't sit well with me. The remanded says 6 hours. It was supposed to be just one additional hour of the already permitted one, so 2 hours. How and when did it get to 6 hours? So Carleton was counting 6 hours early. So, super weird. I'm sure nothing weird happened, right? Cat Turd says, if you want to know why Pierre Poilievre lost, here you go. He's about as self-aware as Zelensky. Idiot. Here we go.
Down tariffs and other irresponsible threats from President Trump. Conservatives will work with the Prime Minister and all parties with the common goal of defending Canada's interests and getting a new trade deal that puts these tariffs behind us while protecting our sovereignty and the Canadian people.
So telling Trump to back off riled Cat Turd's feathers a bit. We already talked about the polls there. So Jason says, audit the rolls in Canada. Or I said, damn shame our elections are rigged. And Jason says, audit the voter rolls in Canada. This is how to fix it. And then focus on polling stations with 70%, with more than 70% turnout. Or is that less than 70% turnout? Then it will be up to Pierre Poilievre to present a case of maladministration in Carleton. So I don't know. I think it's a trap. I think unless he comes with a smoking gun, unless he comes with ironclad evidence that the election was stolen on something, somewhere, I don't know that anybody takes that seriously. I think that he needs to do something else in order to remedy this. And what do I mean by something else? Great question. Trump, when he lost, pivoted and won the next election handily. And he didn't complain about the election being, he complained about it, but it wasn't the central crown jewel of his complaint. He went and made another case, right? He went and built, the second time running into the 2024 election, or running into 2024, the coalition he built included, RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, all of these, Elon Musk, all these people who were not standing by his side the first time. There was a plan in place, it seems, right? And it doesn't seem like there's that kind of plan. Doing something else doesn't seem in the cards. And if you, in the Ninja Turtles, they have to fight Shredder. And in the live action Ninja Turtles movie from 1989, they have to fight Shredder at the end. And so they're all standing on the rooftop, and Splinter's in danger or something like that, and they're trying to fight Shredder, and they go one by one and they lose because they lose. And that's, I feel like it's an obvious attack. It's a frontal, obvious attack, the same as the Ninja Turtles were trying on Shredder. And in that kind of configuration, you lose. You have to do something different. You can't attack this from the front. They're going to see it coming, and they're going to say, oh, he's doing the legal thing. He's doing the elections aren't above board thing. That's not going to work as an argument unless you have something to back it up. And even if you have something to back it up, on Kitchen Table Talks, I often say, pretend I hit you. If I say I didn't hit you, even if you have eyewitnesses, people are going to be questioning about it. And in the world of politics, that's all you need. And it's one of those things where even if they have it, even if they have ironclad smoking gun proof, I don't think that it's going to matter one little tiny bit. And so how do you deal with that in a realistic way? I don't know. I honestly genuinely don't know. But I know that it's a trap for Pierre Poilievre to come out and say the elections are rigged, or this was not above board, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think he should concede. I think John Rustad conceding was the worst thing he could have done. But I don't know what the strategy can be. So maybe he's convened his war room. I don't imagine he slept last night, because he's probably pretty pissed off if he didn't see this coming, because, he should have seen this coming. He should have had contingency plans for this. But I don't know what those contingency plans would be. Gov.exe says, Jagmeet Singh says he'll be stepping down as the NDP party leader. Yay! Winning. So that's a minor win. I'll take that. Western Standard says hospitals intermittently close in Scott Moe's riding. The Saskatchewan government stays silent. Weird, right? Don't you think that's weird? So here's the last thing, talking about elections. Sorry, this maybe should have been a couple of tabs earlier, but here is how can illegals vote in Canada? This could have maybe impacted the Carleton riding, maybe, I don't know, 80,000 voters, 100% turnout. Sure, why not? Contrarian says Canada election says you need to be a Canadian citizen to vote. They're lying. Here's proof right from Elections Canada website. So this little video is just 20 odd seconds, and it's got little beeps and boops, but I'm going to talk over it a little bit because it underlines certain things. So this is on the Canadian elections website. I think it says, yes, you can obtain a driver, or not elections. This is just governmental information. It says, yes, you can obtain a Canadian driver's license, even if you are not a Canadian citizen. The requirements are vary by province, but generally you can get a license if you're a permanent resident, a valid work or student visa, or if you have an approved refugee claim. And so here is this. It says Elections Canada says you can show one of these pieces of identification, your driver's license. That's one. Option 3, if you don't have ID, you can still vote if you declare your identity. You have to have, and then it says, yes, you can obtain a Canadian driver's license even if you're not a Canadian citizen. So these are ways to use your citizens, or use people who are being flooded into the country and given refugee status, given driver's licenses, to vote. That'll be easy for them, and they won't get in any trouble because nobody's ever going to look. That's it. And that sucks, but I wish it weren't so. But here we are, right? Here we are, and we are looking at this, and this has happened. And what remains to be seen is what happens next. Carney will be sworn in as the next prime minister. Will this last for any period of time? It is in the same configuration as the last parliament we've had. It's a little bit different, the numbers, but the Liberals have a minority again. They can lean on the NDP and they'll have a majority. They can lean on the Bloc and they'll have a majority, and they can keep that. They can make that last for years, as they've done up till now, and they've been very effective at giving away Canadian taxpayer money to insiders, shutting down any investigations, and passing censorship laws, and just terrorizing the country. And that's going to go on. And in our system, I don't see any stop. I don't even see a break at this point in time. So maybe if the Bloc sides with the CPC, but even then, they don't have enough to stop the Liberals and the NDP. So we're kind of screwed. I wish it weren't so. Anyway, we're going to go to the rest of the show. So we're going to say goodbye to the stream. Thanks everybody for watching. And we'll catch you tomorrow for more fun and stuff. I'm sure it's going to be super fun. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful